Somebody very deliberately murdered him. It was an execution, no mercy.
A brutal killing.
He had 5 knife wounds, with the final being in the jugular.
A dark mystery with multiple suspects.
There was a $15 million life insurance policy. That's motive.
He was a fraudster, a high-level con man.
Everywhere you looked in that family, there was a criminal on every branch, really. Well, who done it? $42 million and all these people that wanted him dead. That's a whodunit.
The truth will be revealed.
This is a case of a century, really. Case of a lifetime for a detective.
Every day in North America, dozens of people are murdered. The key to solving the toughest of these homicides lies in the final 24 hours of the victim's life. To crack the case, detectives must reconstruct that critical timeline. The minutes and hours containing evidence that can help unlock the mystery and catch the killer. Greenwich, Connecticut. One of the most affluent towns in North America.
It's just the definition of luxury. If you don't have multi-millions of dollars, you would have no chance to ever live there. It's just filled with sprawling mansions, filled with very wealthy people, from CEOs to celebrities.
But no amount of money is guaranteed to keep you safe.
Andrew Kissel was discovered by the moving crew. They had been moving him throughout the course of the weekend, then came back first thing on Monday morning.
They went to the door, knock, 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 nobody is answering the door. So they tried the door and it was unlocked. One of the movers goes down to the basement to pick up an item. Next to the item is Andrew's body. He is shocked. He goes upstairs, he tells the other guys. They called their boss, and their boss said, call 911.
You heard it come over the radio, and I said, hey, Pierre, run that address. And he runs the address.
And I just remember him giving me a look like this was going to be a very interesting case.
Andrew Kissel was very successful in real estate. He was living a very lavish lifestyle. He rented a huge backcountry mansion in Greenwich. He was going out on yachts. There were parties. Beautiful life, beautiful house, wife, children, success, money.
He enjoyed the high life. He enjoyed being the big guy on a block, showing everybody a good time.
Greenwich PD homicide detectives Terry McHugh, Pasquale Iorfino, and Pierangelo Corticelli arrive at the scene.
It was a bloody scene.
He had 5 knife wounds, with the final being in the jugular.
You imagine sticking a knife in somebody? That's a terrible thing to do. Monsters do this stuff.
He was also found bound and gagged.
No mercy. Now, you know he was yelling. Had to be. Had to be, right?
They actually cleaned off the knife on his pants, wiped the blade clean and took it with them. That's professional. That's a pretty good hitman.
Your experience tells you that, number one, it wasn't a random crime. It was an execution, very personal. There's no question about that.
To solve his murder, Detectives need to uncover every significant detail of Andrew Kissel's last 24 hours, starting with his time of death.
You can tell by the position of the body and the way the blood is, and you can get an idea about how long it had been like that. And with the assistance of the medical examiner, they're able to pinpoint it to a degree. We know Sunday is the day Andrew Kissel was killed. He was probably killed in the evening.
They begin to build a picture of what happened.
There was no break-ins to the home. It wasn't forcibly entered. He obviously let the murderer in the house. First three questions out of my head was, why was he home alone? How long was he home alone? And who knew he was home alone?
We have to interview all of the people that are closest to Andrew and ask the basic information of the timeline of where they were leading up to the events of Andrew being found.
There's all kinds of fancy words for it, victimology, but bottom line is you have to learn who your victim was. Not only are you establishing the deceased timeline, but you're establishing the timeline of anyone that could be connected to this type of a murder.
Detectives track down Andrew's next of kin.
Haley Kissel was Andrew's wife. Very smart, educated woman, making a lot of money on her own.
She was told by the detective lieutenant that there was a body in the basement, and she immediately said, it's probably Andrew. She showed no emotion. Most people show a lot of emotion, and most people want to see the body. She didn't want to know.
She wasn't grieving, she wasn't sobbing. There was no tears flowing down that face. You never know that somebody died in her family, especially her husband, that's for sure. She claimed she saw him on Saturday. She was assisting the movers. She left on Saturday. He was home alone on Sunday, and he was found dead first thing in the morning on Monday. It's just too coincidental that everybody left, and the only guy that stayed was murdered. You know, we had an issue with that. We couldn't figure out why Haley was in such a rush to get out of there with the kids. She told us that they were actually splitting up, so she was gonna find a new location to reside in with the kids.
Haley reveals their separation wasn't the only reason for the movers.
Andrew and Haley hadn't paid the rent. They had $10,000 a month mansion they were living in beautiful backcountry Greenwich, and they were going to be evicted.
And that's why the movers were there. He was running out of money, and he was miserable. And it was just not a good situation.
She told us that he was using cocaine, that he drank, that he was abusive.
She knew of all of his antics. She caught him with prostitutes all the time. She was embarrassed over and over and over, I'm sure.
She was furious. Their life was falling apart. She was extremely, extremely angry.
Haley makes a series of admissions.
On Saturday, Haley and Andrew had a visibly loud argument, heated over money. And they argued right in front of the movers and everybody that was on site.
She also volunteered that there was a $15 million life insurance policy on Andrew. So that's motive. Hello? That's a big thing. So we said, well, tell us about that. She says, well, I wouldn't get it. Well, who would get it? It's in trust for the children, if you will. 2 hours into the interview, she gets a call on her cell phone from her lawyer. And he said, you can't talk to my client anymore.
Then all contact with her basically stopped. Now, of course, it puzzled us that she was the widow of a guy that was dead, but she had to go to an attorney to see if she could answer a question. Of course, that piques our interest. So we contacted the insurance company.
I found the insurance policy and the application that he had made. And in it, I read the kids were contingency beneficiaries, meaning on her demise. No, Haley was the beneficiary.
That's what we call a red flag in our business.
Andrew Kissel's wife, Haley, has landed squarely in detective sights as a person of interest in his murder.
She obviously had some tough times with Andrew, and any woman would. He was having a grand old life at her expense, really.
For the investigators, the case bears eerie parallels to another death in Andrew's family.
To make it even more bizarre, his brother had been killed a few years earlier. One day, he came home. His wife gave him a strawberry milkshake laced with sedatives, knocked him unconscious, basically, and she bludgeoned him to death, and then had his body rolled up in a carpet and put it in a storage unit.
That was a big story. And then you come with Andrew's story, right? Now you got two brothers in the same family being murdered. I think the world wanted to know if Haley was directly involved.
The truth lies with Haley's timeline.
Haley Kissel was with friends down the road, actually. The family confirmed that she was there all day. She had a solid alibi on the day of Andrew's death.
We were able to trace every place she was, and she didn't leave. You know, she was not present at that murder.
The focus shifts away from Haley and onto her dead husband's finances.
Andrew Kissel had been investigated by the FBI for a large mortgage fraud scheme.
We found out he had this real estate development company, which took legitimate properties, millions of dollars each, just to buy the property.
He would take out a multi-million-dollar mortgage, and he would submit fraudulent paperwork saying that had been paid back, when in fact it hadn't.
He now goes back to the bank, and he borrows another $3 or $4 million on the same property. He did it 9 times.
This was one of several schemes the investigation uncovered.
There was a number of properties over in New Jersey, and he had gathered a number of investors, including members of his family, to invest money in this buying of this number of buildings. He sold it, but he didn't tell anybody, and he kept the money.
He was supposed to be paying dividends to the investors, but was actually taking money from them. I remember Pat describing Andrew as a mini Madoff.
It was $42 million in money pilfered along the way. He was great at thievery.
But eventually, somebody discovered the forged documents, his crimes unraveled, and he had been caught by the FBI.
He was charged with a number of federal crimes. April 6th, he was supposed to go to federal court and be sentenced. He was facing 8 to 10 years.
If there's a number of suspects because that person has defrauded a large amount of people, definitely it opens up the suspect pool considerably. And police have to start eliminating one by one.
Well, who done it? $42 million and all these people that wanted him dead. That's a whodunit.
We obtained the whole victim list from the FBI, and it was quite a long list.
Anybody we thought lost money, could have lost money, Andrew had a negative relationship with, anything of that nature, you name it, we interviewed him.
Of the big dollar individuals that lost the greatest amount of money were all mortgage companies and insurance companies, which are all insured.
And the other people, most of them we found out were rather elderly, well-to-do people. They're not gonna kill him.
Haley's parents were on that victim list as well.
You're talking about sweet people, nice people. Just because they had money and they were ripped off. They're gonna come after you in civil court, but they don't pick up knives and go after the guy that stole their money.
The investigation does yield an important fact, shared by all of Andrew's victims.
Even with all the millions of dollars that he stole off of these people, we found out that really nobody knew he was home alone. So now, it really limited the search for suspects to somebody in a closer circle.
They focus in on individuals familiar with Andrew's whereabouts around the time of the murder.
We came across the name Carlos Trujillo, who was his right-hand man, so to speak. For lack of a better term, he was a jack of all trades for Andrew, both in Andrew's personal life as well as in his business life.
Carlos became close to Andrew in that he drove him, he drove the children, he ran errands, he took care of things. He was like a man Friday, if you will.
In fact, Carlos was one of the only people that Andrew Kissel had left by his side. He was almost like a friend at that point because he had nobody left.
Brought in for questioning, Carlos admits to having seen Andrew mere hours before he was killed.
Carlos told us in an interview he'd had a pre-arrangement with Andrew to pick up 3 items of furniture from the house. And he was going to come down on the Sunday and pick it up. So he goes down there and he says he was there for about a half hour where he saw Andrew. He said he chatted with him a little bit. He said Andrew looked okay. He was drinking Scotch whiskey, which was his drink of choice. And he said that he had a good attitude. You know, he's concerned about going to jail down the road, but he was okay, he said. He said he then left and he went back to Bridgeport.
Carlos told us that he had left at 6 p.m. that evening. And then, of course, we have the movers coming in first thing in the morning.
So we determined he'd been the last person, as far as we knew, to have seen Andrew alive. Very important to us.
Locating and being able to interview the last person to see the deceased alive is frankly critical in every case, because at that point you can establish things like what was going on with the deceased. Were they scared? Did they say anything to the person they're speaking with? Had they learned something?
He kept on saying, I love Andrew, I love him. And not in a romantic way, but in a his friend way. He tried to maybe overconvince us that how much he admired and loved Andrew. But he kept on saying, I gotta go, I gotta go, I gotta go, right? So, you know, we had to let him go. We looked at each other after that. We said, you know, he loves this guy. He's his buddy. What would you be doing if it was me? You know, you want to help out as much as you can. He gave us his song and dance. Why?
We kept digging, and we came to find out that Andrew treated Carlos just like a gopher. There was a report of Andrew calling Carlos on his day off, saying, I need you to come down here right away. So he leaves his family and drives all the way 30, 40 minutes down to Greenwich. And the only thing that Andrew wanted was for him to go out and get him some fast food. So it was that kind of disregard for Carlos, which didn't really fit well with Carlos's description of having a great relationship with Andrew and him being like a father figure.
Very strange, so a lot of things just weren't adding up with him. It didn't make any sense. That's a problem.
Carlos Trujillo's quick exit from his interview with detectives leaves them with more questions than answers.
So a week later, we had him in for a second interview.
And in this one, he gives us this tremendously detailed story. He said he went back to Bridgeport, but not right away. He left after seeing Andrew at 6 o'clock. He leaves and he goes down to Queens.
He said how he went to a bar, hung out with a lot of people, and danced the night away.
He says, oh, the place was mobbed. And what else did you do there? I had a couple of beers and I left.
Carlos Trujillo told investigators that he drove home in the late hours of Sunday morning, around 1 a.m.
He said he stopped at a restaurant, then brought home food for his girlfriend.
So that gave him an alibi, not placing him at the crime scene at the time of Andrew's death.
His house and his vehicle were searched, and we didn't find anything that was pertinent. His behavior going to Queens and coming back, it's not something that raised very big red flags from our point of view.
Because of the direction he took, detectives have a way to check Trujillo's story.
Easy Pass is a system where there's a monitor in your car that you pay for. And what it does, it lets you go through the fast toll lane without stopping to give the toll person any money. What it does, and it registers your car as it goes through, and sometimes takes a picture, depending on the toll booth.
We were able to subpoena those records. So we were able to verify that he was, in fact, going over the Bronx-Whitestone Bridge, as he indicated. However, there was no corresponding return trip on the Easy Pass.
So we questioned him about where he was, and he said, well, he couldn't find his Easy Pass. It was somewhere in the car, and that he had to go over a cash lane. We wanted to make sure that we understood the time frame on his whereabouts from leaving that house to Queens, back to Bridgeport. I mean, we wanted to make sure we were thorough. This is a case of a century, really. Case of a lifetime for a detective.
Determining the truth requires one of the team to sift through hours of CCTV footage.
Oh, Lord, Pierre was a rookie. Hey, that's what rookies do, all the grunt work, right?
At the time, it was still old-fashioned VHS videotape. It wasn't digital video. So I had a milk crate full of videotapes from the MTA police in their little viewing room.
He must have had some serious vision problems looking at those cameras nonstop.
As Detective Corticelli continues his search, the team discovers another potential suspect, Eric Boxerman.
So he was Andrew's friend, but he was also the man who worked with Andrew in the building business.
He's a real estate financier. He is on the social circuit in town. If you open up Greenwich magazine, you'll see him at, all of the events throughout town.
When questioned, Boxerman is forthcoming about the events of that day.
He cooperated, didn't hire an attorney.
At 11 a.m. on Sunday morning, he came to the house and observed that Andrew Kissel was drunk at the house by himself. He told investigators Andrew Kissel was laying on a couch and basically incapacitated, which tells you the state of mind of Andrew Kissel.
He is asked to explain his whereabouts during the window in which Andrew was killed.
He said he was home that night, which is right around the corner.
We asked him, did he see anybody? Did he talk to anybody? He said he saw a lady walking a dog, and that was it. So, okay.
So that was a question mark in our minds.
Anybody who has contact with the deceased the day the person died is going to be a suspect. Because you are immediately a person who has the opportunity to kill him.
Unable to verify Boxerman's alibi, detectives dig into his relationship with the Kissels.
We came to find out that his relationship with Haley was more than just a friendship.
While Andrew was slipping out the front door, here's this guy slipping in the back door.
If you're a person who saw the deceased just before he died, and you're having an affair with the deceased's wife, you're going to be the #1 suspect. It's a volatile situation. If there's a love triangle, you just don't know how you're going to react. And you might react by crying, but you might react by committing a murder.
As more light is shed on their illicit romance, a bizarre rumor surfaces.
It hits the news that Andrew killed himself because he wanted to be a great guy and give his kids this $15 million in life insurance.
The media speculated at the time that it was potentially a suicide for hire. Who would choose to kill themselves in such a slow and painful manner? To be stabbed by a knife multiple times, in your basement, bound up. There are other ways to do it.
From a victimology point of view, everything that we knew about Andrew was all about Andrew. He was a classic narcissist. That whole idea was just crazy to us. What was interesting was News 12 was the first, I believe, to float this story based on an unconfirmed source to their tip line. Pat and Terry were able to track down the telephone number from this unconfirmed source.
The number is a cell phone tied to Eric Boxerman.
So was he floating that idea as a way to shield or protect Haley based on his relationship with her? Were there other motives? We didn't know.
So now we got very interested in him.
A Newsline tip has put Eric Boxerman in the frame for Andrew Kissel's murder.
It was just very, very odd that his cell phone would be connected to this story of Andrew, arranging his own homicide.
Detectives weigh what Boxerman had to benefit against what he had to lose.
He was a millionaire. He owned a $13 million home. Not a shack, a $13 million home. He was a successful businessman. But he's having an affair with Andrew's wife. So, yeah, it piqued our interest. But just because somebody's having a relationship with somebody doesn't mean they're a murderer either.
The crime scene also bears none of the hallmarks of a crime of passion.
This was pretty much a professional hit. He didn't have any hits in his past.
Nothing ever put him at the scene, so we couldn't go anyplace with that.
Nothing else came back to him as that type of person that would actually kill somebody. But he put a spin on the case, and, it puzzled us.
With Boxerman's involvement looking unlikely, they reach an impasse.
We worked hard on it. We talked to all those people, and it ended up I couldn't go anyplace. Just couldn't go.
Well, the case goes stale. Terry had retired.
My time came up. I talked about it with Pat. I said, I'm ready to go. And he says, all right, I'll finish this thing off. And so Pierre was pretty much involved in it. He got my badge, which was nice, because it kind of carries it on,
By that point, we had executed probably over 25 or 30 search warrants.
You can't be sitting in the office waiting for luck to come to you. We tried everything. We went everywhere. We never saw our families, and we were always on the move. At one point, we joked that if we put our other halves in photo arrays, we probably wouldn't be able to pick them out, because we hadn't seen them in so long that we'd spend more time with each other than anybody else. Bashing our heads together, is trying to, come to a successful conclusion, trying to figure this out.
There was an enormous amount of media pressure on the police to solve this case. I know Andrew Kissel's father, frustrated with the progress on the investigation in the first few months, wrote an email to the detectives and called them the Keystone Cops, which I think really, insulted them because they were working tirelessly on this case.
So Pat had that email blown up and pinned on his bulletin board, I remember. And that was one of those things that was driving him to show the father that we had not given up and we were still going to go at this as best we could and solve the case.
After countless hours viewing CCTV footage, Detective Corticelli makes a breakthrough.
He called me and said, "I got him." I'm like, "Are you kidding me?" And then he showed me the picture. It was like unbelievable, clear as could be, Carlos Trujillo coming through the cash lane.
That system down there took one of the best pictures you'd ever want to take. It was amazing. God, he looked terrific.
So Carlos comes back across the bridge toward Connecticut. It was much sooner than he had initially admitted. Right before the time in question when Andrew was killed,
Detectives now have proof that Carlos lied about his alibi.
for that reason, we looked over everything again with fresh eyes. I remember sitting in the FBI's White Plains office with Pat and going into their evidence room where they had the evidence from Andrew's case. I believe it was 25 or 26 banker boxes full of documents that we went through with a fine-tooth comb.
It didn't seem like Carlos Trujillo really had any reason why he would want to see Andrew Kissel dead. But investigators began to realize that Carlos was not just his driver, but was involved in some of Andrew Kissel's business deals, money changing hands, part of this mortgage fraud scheme.
And then you had his own brother, George Trujillo, that had power of attorney on many of the properties that were illegally sold. He was right involved with that. You had Carlos's girlfriend, Stella Tafur. Stella Tafur was Andrew Kissel's accountant for all the frauds. So she was directly tied in the whole case. It was like the entire Trujillo family tree, and it was a criminal on every branch, really.
Carlos's motive slowly comes into focus.
Andrew was going to be pleading guilty, and then he was going to be fully sentenced. But he could have implicated other people. And based on that, the people that would be most likely to be in peril would be Carlos, his family members, and the people that were directly involved with Andrew's business.
It's damning evidence, but detectives need direct proof of a murder plot. They scour the materials gathered from Carlos's home.
We found credit cards with different people's names in it, and one happened to be Amita Trujillo. And so I say, hey, who's Amita Trujillo? Let's find out who it is.
They track down her address in Waterbury, Connecticut, 57 miles from Andrew's home.
I say, Pierre, let's go. We have to go to Waterbury. We're headed to see this Amita Trujillo. I wanted to go poke at the hornet's nest, because that's what we do. Waterbury is a tough neighborhood, and it's the opposite of Greenwich. It's a bunch of blue-collar workers struggling to make things work and just trying to work hard for their money. We get around the back of the house. We start banging on the back door. I hear somebody yelling from the second floor, "Hello, hello." I said, "Hey, how you doing? It's the police. We need to talk to you." So she comes out, and we start talking to her. And we showed her a picture of Carlos. So she says, "Yeah, that's one of my cousins. Yeah, I know him." And I said, "Here to talk about a homicide." And she says, "You mean they killed that rich Jew guy?"
Detectives interviewing a cousin of Carlos Trujillo have unearthed more than they expected to find.
And we said, "Oh boy, here we go." I said, "Well, tell us some more." She goes, "Well, my half-brother, Lenny, was at a 4th of July party last year, and this guy, Carlos, the guy in the picture, came up to him and offered him money to kill his boss." She said that Carlos said that he'd stole $500,000 from the boss and he wanted it back, so they needed to get him killed. And then she heard another story that he was ill and wanted to die. All kinds of different stories. But in the end, it was Carlos killing his boss.
It's an astonishing tale. Detectives zero in on Lenny Trujillo.
Now we gotta fill in the rest of the blanks. Just because you know something, you gotta be able to prove it. Lenny, believe it or not, is a naive simpleton. Lived in Worcester, Massachusetts. Just recently had a kid. We really need Lenny to tell us everything that happened, that transpired between him and Carlos. So we push him.
So Lenny Trujillo said that basically Carlos approached him and said that this guy that he worked for, this rich guy in Greenwich, wanted to die. And he basically was going to hire him to help do it for some cash and a computer.
He was surprisingly cooperative. He said that his whole intention was to play Carlos for his money. He was going to take whatever money he could from Carlos, and that would be that.
Lenny admits he and Carlos worked long and hard planning the crime.
This was 6 months, 8 months in the works. They would meet at parking lots, on rest stops, on highways, and Carlos would give them more money. They continued to plan it and plan it and plan it. He told us that Carlos put him up in a hotel. We were able to go there and find records that Carlos paid for a room there on a credit card and that Lenny stayed there, and we had both their signatures on receipts. The next morning, they drove down to Greenwich, and he described Greenwich, he described certain stores in Greenwich.
This was detailed information that a kid from Worcester, Massachusetts could not have come up with on his own. It's pointing directly to the conspiracy between Lenny and Carlos to commit this murder. And he said the plan was to tie the victim up, bring them down to the basement, and stab them. So by virtue of that, we were able to know immediately that he was telling us, you know, at least in those parts of his story, the truth. Lenny admitted to 90% and wouldn't go to that extra 10% of actually having committed the murder or being there when Andrew was killed.
Despite lacking a full confession, it's enough to finally complete the picture of what happened in the hours leading to Andrew Kissel's murder.
Our timeline is so essential to everything that took place on the last day. On his one day off on a Sunday, unbeknownst to Andrew, Carlos decides he's gonna drive all the way down to Greenwich just to say hello. He just wants to see how Andrew's doing.
When he left Andrew, he went down I-95 as he's going into New York, turns his cell phone off, according to his cell phone records. He uses an easy pass to go across the Bronx-Whitestone Bridge, but then within less than 2 hours, takes the cash lanes to cross back into the Bronx from Queens. So Carlos comes back with Lenny to Greenwich, Connecticut. He now is let into the house by Andrew because Andrew knows him.
They might be having a drink together. They definitely did some coke. Then, one way or the other, they took him downstairs to the basement.
They gagged him, and they tied him just like Lenny told us he was gonna do. They put him down on the ground. They made it nice and quiet.
I imagine that they held him with one hand and took a knife and 5 times plunged it to the hilt, 3 of which were kill shots. 2 in the aorta, 1 in the carotid.
After committing the murder, we believe they left the home. Carlos could have driven Lenny back home and then went back home to Bridgeport, Connecticut.
Confident in their case, Detectives Iorfino and Corticelli track Carlos down.
We found him a couple towns up driving a limo, and we stopped the car. I came walking up with Pierre. I said, "Hey, remember me? It's time. You're under arrest for homicide."
When they finally arrested Carlos and Lenny, they used my handcuffs that I was issued in 1965 and still had. They put my handcuffs on both of those mutts. And they put them on a plaque, and they gave them to me. I got it at home. It's fabulous.
On April 15th, 2011, Lenny Trujillo is sentenced to 20 years in prison. Carlos Trujillo pleads down, and after serving a sentence of 6 years, he is deported to Colombia.
Carlos only had 6 years, and I felt a little slighted by that. But when I realized that he was getting deported, as an immigrant myself, I love the mainland and my homeland, but I never want to go back to live there. I like it right here. So he could never come back here. He got a life sentence. His brother George went back to Colombia. Stella Tafur was Andrew Kissel's accountant. She disappeared. Who knows what happened to Stella? Money was everything to Andrew Kissel. That's how he got himself in this predicament to start with. He stole $42 million, owed a lot of people money, but did he deserve to get stabbed to death like he did? No.
In the end, if you do a good police job, it all comes out. And we did a good, thorough job, and we put our hearts into it, and it came out.